Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Android TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
The big story on Action News.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week of Women to Watch. I'm Sue Rocco, and it's very exciting to be here. We actually have a big show this week. In addition to my interview with my very special guest, Michaela Hoag. Mikey is the founder and co-chair of Part the Cloud, which is an annual fundraiser for Alzheimer's research, which is very, very personal and dear to my heart. I lost my mom during COVID to Alzheimer's. I lost my grandpa years ago, and actually both my mother's sisters. So I'm very honored and thrilled to have Mikey with us, and we're going to be talking about all the great things that are going on for research. Later in the show, you'll hear from our lifestyle expert, Sherry Morrison, and Sherry's going to be profiling Ellen Warner. Ellen Warner is the author and photojournalist of a new book, which I have right here because I read it, and it's going to be a fabulous read. It's the second half, and she interviews and profiles 40 women who talk about their life and what they're doing in the second half of their life. And at the very end of the show, we have a very special segment with our Wellness Watch expert, Dr. Shalja Dixit, and she's joined by one of her colleagues and partners who is doing incredible work for women underserved in New Jersey and New York area. So we have a lot of great women on the show this week. So now I'm very honored and excited to welcome to the show, Michaela Hoag. Mikey, thanks for being here.
Susan, thank you so much. Thank you for asking me to be a part of this. I'm so thrilled to be able to tell the story. I am sorry that you are touched by this disease, but I really appreciate the ability to be able to bring awareness to something that's very near and dear to my heart and to my families. Thank you.
Well, when I read about your work, I was immediately drawn to you and your work because you seem very hopeful and proactive. And, I always want to kind of stay in that space. You and I both probably in the back of our mind have that worry, that small voice. We don't ever want to come down with this disease. It's really horrific for not only the patient, but all of their family members. But as always, I want to learn a little bit more about the little Michaela Hoag growing up. And I love how you described yourself growing up in New Jersey as a tomboy. Mm-hmm. Tell me, what were your aspirations when you were little prior to your education and career in marketing?
I grew up, I had a wonderful upbringing. I was one of six. I was fifth out of six. 3 girls, 3 boys. I think I grew up always wanting never to have my brothers, get that far ahead of me. So athletics was very important to our life. Education, hard work. We grew up on a farm. So before I started school, there was a lot of jobs. Not a big working farm, more of a gentleman's farm, but chickens and horses and what have you. I had 2 wonderful parents that were madly in love with each other and extended their love to the kids. And I had a big Irish family, so we had lots of gathering, lots of chaos. And I love chaos. I love conversation. I love being around people. I get energy from people. So what I'm doing now, again, invigorates my soul. And it's sad that I've got on this journey, but I am hopeful. I'm very hopeful for a cure.
Yeah. And I should say, I didn't say at the top of the show that you've lost both your mom and dad to Alzheimer's. So that is why it's such an important cause for you. Another kind of fun fact is that you were a horseback rider and you qualified for the 1988 Olympics.
For the short list. So I was one of 8. Again, being grown up at a farm with horses and all, that was something that I picked up in New Jersey at a public barn. It was a troop is how I started, it was $8 an hour and you'd show up and you'd pick out the horse's name and, single file, that whole thing. But it gave me great confidence, great organizational skills. I was competing all through high school, all through college, and then I took 2 years after college to try out for the Olympics. And like I said, I made it down to the last 8. The last weekend, my horse pulled his hamstring, and on the Monday after, I walked away and really never got back on a horse again. Ironically.
Wow.
So interesting.
Well, yeah, I would say you have a competitive nature, competing with the brothers and then competing as an athlete.
Yeah.
Does that help you in the work that you're doing? In other words, is that a motivator? Because I will tell you, fundraising is not easy. It's really hard.
Absolutely. Also, in horseback riding, men and women are equal. So people always say to me, how does it feel going into a room of men? I don't see genders. I see opportunities. I look at the world as dots. And when something like I'm doing now, I love to connect the dots. I love seeing wait, this person has a background or they're touched by it. Shouldn't we all work together? I don't understand why we're not all collaborating, because the only way I can make a difference, you can make a difference, it's the village. And I look at the world like an opportunity to connect all the pieces and bring them together. So the riding gave me great confidence to, anything in front of you. I almost broke the world's record. I looked at it like that wasn't a big deal. It was sort of like that was another obstacle on the road. Of course you would go, welcome that opportunity. So I think it allowed me to do a lot of public speaking. I did a lot of commentating with the riding. I did sort of color commentator a couple of years after I finished the sport. I enjoy that. I had no training, but all of those things are another door that can lead to another road that you just don't know where life's going to lead you. So
it's a great outlook. Yeah, it's a great outlook to have that, the excitement for life and what's around the corner. You've described yourself as an old soul.
Yeah, I do.
In what way? Or when did you recognize that?
I think the riding, because I was on the road a lot, I was always on a different path. So during high school, I would get all my work done ahead of time and leave Thursday night to some competition. College, the same thing. And so being on a different track, not being around for the normal weekends of college, and you were always with older people. I was always, in horseback riding, I was competing against my coach who was 55 years old, and I'm a 21-year-old. I was always surrounded by older people, and therefore you had to act a certain way. You had to think a different way. It wasn't, the noise doesn't get in the way. It's more, what's the prize at the end of the day? So with that, I don't think of things being not difficult, but there are always obstacles, and every disappointment to me forces you to think about things differently. And then, the road sort of turns. So, so it's all well.
Tell me a little bit about how you got into sports marketing. Your first job, I believe, out of school was with HMG.
Yes.
How did that opportunity come to be?
Well, because with the horseback riding, and then I was doing a lot of public speaking for the World Cup finals during my riding. So whether it was for sponsors, and different people would ask, could I get up? Could I open up a reception leading into it? We went to a bunch of embassies. So I was always speaking, being on the US team. I did 2 summers in Europe. So that was like a natural progression for me to go into sports marketing. And I was on the sponsorship side. We didn't at our firm represent individuals. It was more corporations. So, Maxwell House Coffee wants to be involved with skiing. There was just natural, again, those 2 dots that I talk about. It was, if you want to be USA Today, we did the all-star balloting. So you just look at where can certain sponsorships get the biggest impact. So with Alzheimer's, then it's just, it's another progression, I feel like, of what I used to do.
Did you ever have any aspirations for media?
It wasn't available for women. I did do some of the color commentating, but I mean, horseback riding was it might have been once in a while it got TV time. So, and I remember going to
any form of you are a very good speaker, and you jumped at those opportunities.
Thank you. I don't ever think I am, but thank you. Journalism and that kind of stuff wasn't a course. There wasn't something I could have taken back then. It wasn't available with the realm I was going through.
Okay. Let's talk about your dad, and tell me a little bit about him and your relationship with him.
I adored my dad. He was very humble, very hardworking, grew up with, in a New York City 1-bedroom apartment kind of thing. No money, earned a scholarship to go to Yale. He played on the lacrosse team while he was there. And that was significant because when the Korean War broke out, he had the whole lacrosse team sign up and join the war. While he was at war, there was a bomb explosion. So he was riddled with shrapnel. They did not think he was going to make it. He did, obviously. And he was awarded a Purple Heart. And for him, it was his mind that got him out of his economic situation. And he was always grateful, very faithful, spiritual, that he could, with his skills, get him to a place to be able to provide for a family that his single mother couldn't do. So we were always raised with a great sense of patriotism, to hard work, to the need for a wonderful education, and in the end, that his brain is what failed him, is what made him the great person that he was. So around 65, he started showing signs, and his pride that he accomplished what he did was taken away because he could no longer figure out how to tip at a restaurant, things that math-wise had given him such great success. And you just see that frustration and that sense of just demolished, by the disease.
Was he a storyteller? Irish love to tell stories.
Yes. Yes, a lot of storytelling, never about the war. We never heard a word about it, but would tell a lot about his upbringing, not having availability. And yes, the American dream, if you work hard, you can change your situation, was great pride in what he was able to accomplish.
So this is a lot, you then find out your father has it. And I don't know if they categorize that as early onset at 65. That's very young, yes. Right? And then your mom develops the same disease, which is very unusual to, a couple. Mm-hmm. How did you handle that emotionally?
Well, my dad, it was almost 20 years of him having it. I would say beginning to end, maybe 14. My mom was his sole provider along with my sister. So I think with Alzheimer's, you spend like 2 years in denial that you go, well, they're just getting older, they're getting forgetful, and you really don't understand the signs. And then when you fast forward with my mom, it was about a year after my dad died, and my mom started showing signs. It was immediate for us. We have seen this disease play out. We've seen the horribleness, and to see her quickly starting to fail mentally, we are going, oh no, buckle your seatbelt. Here we go again. It was absolutely devastating because when my dad passed, we thought, okay, great. She's going to have a life. She hasn't had a life for 12 years.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden not to be able to have that opportunity. It was, equally devastating.
Do you know it? So your dad was diagnosed at 65, but lived for a very long time. It can be rapid decline, which is what happened with my mom. I know you're not a doctor, but doing this work, you have some facts in your head. If it's early onset, is there a longer life to be had than if someone develops it later in life? Is it more swift? The decline?
From what I have seen, and obviously I'm not a doctor, the early onset usually happens much faster. We have a lot of people in their 50s that are getting diagnosed. There are people in their 30s and 40s, especially this family in Colombia, that every single member has Alzheimer's. There's about 5,000 of them. So they're, being studied. For them, it happens so fast within, 6 to 8 years. For my dad, maybe because it just slowly was occurring for about 6 years. And then, he started to fall off the cliff. Then by the end, he was bedridden for, I don't know if it was 2 years or, when I call that just existing, when you at that point. So it was very painful and long at the end. For my mom, it was just more of a slow decline, and she got it in her 80s. So it is a different animal, I think, depending on the age that it starts.
You would think, when we look at the whole picture of it, we're dying to look for commonalities in order to find a cure. And I just wonder, when you see a whole family with it, there has to be something screaming that this is something they all had genetically. This is something they did. This is something they ate. Are they getting close to that within research?
Well, I think there's going to be a cocktail for this disease, because I think there's going to be several ways that you can experience the disease. I do think hereditary is going to be a factor. I do think brain trauma is going to be a factor. I guarantee you environment. There's certain people that are going to be living by, whether it's a power plant or, similar to cancer, where you might have had it in the genes or it might have been an environmental, but there's going to be different ways that you are going to have this disease. Therefore, there'll probably be different ways to solve it, whether it's a head trauma and there's more inflammation in your brain, whether it's, it's the tau or the tangles. But yes, I do think it's not going to be a one drug fix for this disease.
Yeah, which makes it so much harder, right? I mean, and that's
it's the brain. So you can't just open up somebody's brain and take a look at it. That is a big problem. And a lot of drugs, it's hard to get to the brain because of this, the blood-brain barrier that doesn't allow many drugs to get to your brain.
Right. Listen, we're going to go into our first break. When we come back, I want you to describe the moment you got the call and learned your dad had Alzheimer's, and you decided, your mind didn't go right to what we have to care for him. Of course you did, but you said, I'm going to do something about it. Okay. I want to talk about that.
Great.
Stay with us. If you're listening on 1210, our watch team will be coming in, and we will be right back with Mikey Hoag.
Action News, celebrating 50 years with AccuWeather.
The heat is on. In 2010, Philadelphia had a record of 55 days at or over 90 degrees. And those scorchers, they're on the rise. In fact, 10 of the 15 hottest summers occurred in the last 2 decades. Thank you for always trusting us to keep you informed.
You're streaming and we're streaming. Get the AccuWeather forecast and severe storm alerts 24/7 on our 6ABC streaming app.
Whether you're just getting started, already well on your way, planning for your future, drafting your vision, growing toward greatness, or finding that dreams really can come true. Whatever your next steps are, we'll be right here with you, just like we have been for 150 years. Start here, grow here, stay here. Penn Community Bank. Here we grow.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the memories. Go for the view that goes on forever. Go for the bubbles in your bathtub and in your drink. Go to bed whenever you want. Or don't. Go for him. Go for her. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
The following is a real testimonial from the father of a young injured victim.
I didn't think she was going to make it.
Major Perry's daughter was the victim of a horrific accident caused by someone else's negligence.
If you don't find the right counselor, law firm that you're looking for, you will get lost in the wilderness.
Badly injured? Call the Fritz and Bianculli Law Firm at 215-458-2222 and find out why they say, "We got this."
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Android TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch action news live.
The big story on Action News Tonight.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on. Always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. You're watching Women to Watch. I'm Sue Rocco, and I'm joined this week by Mikey Hoag. Mikey is the co-founder and chair of Part the Cloud. By the way, Part the Cloud, let's say where that name came from.
At the time that we were beginning this event, the Alzheimer's Association was going to create this giant cloud for keeping all the research data together. So we thought, let's play off our desire that everyone starts to share their research information, and all of a sudden could get there faster if there was one hub. And then, so we used the cloud metaphorically to say, okay, in your brain, it's kind of cloudy. Could we part it so that it's clear one day? And that's sort of where it came from.
Okay. So I really think it says a lot about you. People get bad news all the time, every day. And, instinctively, we're proactive, we're scared, we're worried, we crumble. So you said, I'm going to do something about this when you found out that your dad had Alzheimer's. Tell me about that call and that decision.
So as I shared with you, I'm one of 6, and all my siblings live within an hour and a half of my parents. I live in California. They are on the East Coast. So when we found out, I knew I physically could not help in the day-to-day matters that my sister and my other siblings were helping. But I could help on research, is where I felt like we could make the biggest impact. So my husband and I made a donation to the Alzheimer's Association for strictly research. And then the next 10 years, I went to all the conferences. I was up to date on where they were investing and what kind of trials they were working on. And I kept noticing that we were always investing in basic science. And that is great. It's invaluable, but basic science doesn't get to trials for 15 to 20 years. And selfishly, we're all on the time clock. I'm looking at my siblings and we're looking at my parents going, okay, so is it all of us? Is it some of us? But it's happening. And how do we get a drug on the market? So I'd love to say that I had that aha moment when I got the call with my dad, but it was more, I think when you first are diagnosed with Alzheimer's, there's no answers. So you kind of go down this dark hole of like, what can we do? There's nothing to take. It's not like when someone says you have cancer, you say, well, where are you being treated? And who's your doctor? With Alzheimer's, you kind of go, oh gosh, I'm sorry. I mean, it really is a dead end street. Yeah. So we got involved with research. And then kept thinking, we got to be doing more. We have to be going faster. And a friend of mine said, you should do an event for Alzheimer's. This is 10 years after we've made our first donation to research. And I said, I don't want to talk about it. It's not something you really want to discuss with people. It's sort of it's a conversation buster. And she said, but if you won't speak about it, who will? And then my mom got diagnosed. And I really felt like, okay, is this a sign? So that's where Part the Cloud started. I gathered a group of women who I knew could put an event on, and most of them were touched by it, not all of them. But it really was going to be, we'll do one event and we'll call it a day. Because I just truly, truly in my heart did not believe anyone would show up. I thought, you have a handful of friends that will show up and your family kind of has to show up. But on a Saturday night, to ask someone to go to an event for Alzheimer's is basically saying, do you want to go to the nursing home? It had such a horrible stigma about the disease that I just didn't think anyone would give up their night to come and listen to something that is so depressing. So anyway, we launched forward. It's 2012, 10 years ago. We launched our first event and we got Tony Bennett to come and sing pro bono. And we sold out. And when I say sold out, it's in, we live in the Bay Area. We live in, heart of Silicon Valley. it's not really a social area. You know, San Francisco is a little more glitzy. New York's glitzy. Where we live, it's not as social as you would think. So 320 people is really like the max of what we can hold around here. And it's sold out, and we raised $2 million that one night.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought to myself, we've launched onto something that none of us knew about. You don't raise that kind of money unless there's a lot of people touched by it.
Well,
and
that's my question. As you're describing that, were all of those people, they all knew someone or had someone?
Well, we didn't. You don't know who's showing up. And really, we thought if we raised $100,000, we would have been thrilled. You know, could we just pay the expenses for the night? But when we raised $2 million, it was like, wait a minute. There's got to be a lot of people who are quietly going through what we're going through. And the point of the event was to say, one, can we raise an awareness? And two, could we possibly raise money towards research? And so all of us, I think, were quite stunned at the success of the evening. So then we thought, well, we can't do this every year. The area can't handle it. And I met Mark Shriver he was giving a presentation about his dad, Sergeant Shriver, who passed away of Alzheimer's. And Mark had just written a book. So I met him and I said, hey, would you ever come out to our area? And he said, by the way, I'm coming out in January. And I said, well, great. So I then created an event around him coming, and he talked about his book. So that's now our formula. We do a black tie event, and then we do a book luncheon. And that's what we've done for the last 10 years. But even the luncheon raised $1 million. So, wow. And it was not intended to be a fundraiser. It's intended to be more of an educational segment. Not that we had a lot to talk about, but it's allowed us to say, hey, we can do a big fundraiser, but then let's get everyone up to speed and really try to peel back the onion on what this disease is all about.
So when you think about moving forward, and I'm always looking for my guests who have to be fundraising and are looking to raise money, how do you get people interested in your cause when there are so many other causes out there, specifically cancer, ALS, right? What it's working for you. And obviously, Mikey, you have a wonderful network. You know people, and you have a wide network, I'll say. But what can you share that has worked for you in just getting people's attention to be interested in in Alzheimer's?
Right. I would say it's taken, for every big donation we've gotten, it's almost 3 to 5 years of the person attending, seeing that we're being really thoughtful about our message, and trusting that we are putting it to really good work. And I think those are all the components for our event. It's really important for us to educate, touch somebody, and then have them leaving feeling good, because you want them to come again. You don't want them leaving down. And so that's the formula we use for the events. But now it's grown into so much bigger than these events. You know, the events are now hopefully becoming a celebration of the work we do over the years. So now, you know, we're looking at a 2-year campaign that we're going to go for the next amount of money. And the last 2 years, I mean, we raised $35 million.
Wow.
It was really incredible.
Wow. So on the West Coast in California.
Well, actually, now we're nationwide. So
good.
Bill Gates, his father and his uncle, his dad just passed away of Alzheimer's. It's something that's near and dear to him. It took me about 3 years to get through to him. And I still have yet to meet him, but sent him a PowerPoint presentation of what we're doing, where the money is, where it's being spent. And he finally answered one day and said, okay, we need to talk. Negotiations went such that he would donate $10 million if I could raise $20 million. And he does not do a lot in Silicon Valley. He's, Seattle or sort of worldwide. So we were very touched that, the first time I presented to his team, I gave them my stats, and I was going through the whole presentation. They said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm going through." They're like, "If you don't think you haven't been analyzed, questioned, everything that was in your PowerPoints have already been analyzed, you're crazy." So, that's where it started.
If you're sitting here, we already know what you've done. Yes.
Well, you try to go, "Oh, okay, let's go." So, but what it's allowed us to do, and also to say, that he's not doing it as a friend. We've never met. He's doing it because we're doing really good research. Yeah. So his team and our team have gotten together, and when you said I'm hopeful, I have chills down my spine when I think of the different areas that we've invested in and the people we have gotten behind. I am so hopeful. I really am so hopeful.
Well, you're so very good at what you do. I mean, it's very hard, and you have to be patient because, as you said, things can take 2, 3, 4, 5 years before they come to fruition. And you talked about numbers. I had here total research investment in clinical research now totals $65 million in 65 research projects.
Yes,
that's really impressive.
It really is. We're in 9 different countries. What I'm really thrilled about is the 60, well, we just added the last couple million, but the 60 million that we have that are already out working in the community has earned $1 billion in follow-on funding. And to me, we do events, we plan things to be able to touch what we are doing, to me is been the most rewarding thing that we've done so far. So I give restricted dollars to the Alzheimer's Association. They put their science panels together. So when we get an application, there are 33 researchers from 13 countries that are reviewing all these applications blindly. The reviewers are, it's the head of the Mayo Neuroscience Department, the Brigham Women's. It is so amazing, the people that the Alzheimer's Association pulls together who are specialists in these fields to read these applications. And then a lot of times they'll say, "Hey, can we do a higher dosage? Can you add another site?" And they are asking a lot of these grantees, but the results, whether they fail or go through, the data that we are going to get from all of these is amazing. So we're pretty thrilled, as you could see, and we're very frugal about every dollar goes to research that we earn, and it's exciting. It is the government. I think the kind of trials we do, they're at 69 trials, and we're at 65. These are pharmaceutical trials. We do a lot of repurposed drugs. Most people won't invest in repurposed drugs because if you're a venture firm, and the drug's already out on the market, you're not really going to make a lot on the.
What does that mean? Repurposed drugs.
So we have a drug that we have put into trials in Colorado that is good for a bone marrow transplant. Well, the researcher feels like it might bring the inflammation down, and it also will help the cells regenerate. But it's already out on the market, so we know it's not toxic. So then you immediately go, well, can it help the brain for Alzheimer's? So those are the kind of projects that we are funding. Very much outside the box. We're trying to think differently than we have in the past. We go at a much faster pace, a much more aggressively investing in things. We're doing a trial with UCSF. We gave them $2.5 million, but the reviewers asked if they would have different sites. So then they included Northwestern and UPenn, and lo and behold, the NIH, which is the National Institute of Health, found out about this trial. They've given them $5 million more to include Mayo Clinic, Houston, and Las Vegas. So when I can see a trial go that would never have happened without Part the Cloud funding, and now we're in 5 different locations of the most prestigious places in the U.S., treating thousands of people, it really fills up my soul. So
yeah. One of the things I think is important, we're 2 women who were very, very personally touched by it. And I'm assuming and I'm certain that anyone listening or watching will know someone or, and one of the things I think earlier in the show, we were talking about, what do you do? What do family members do? And one of the greatest things I learned was to be with the person suffering right where they are. So I think initially when they start forgetting and not recognizing and not knowing, you're very apt to say, oh, don't you remember? Or you remember, or all of those kinds of things to try to tap in. And that's not ever helpful. So no matter where they are, you sit right there with them in that memory.
Correct.
Would you say that was a lesson you learned as well?
Absolutely. One of our first speakers was Lisa Genova, Dr. Lisa Genova. She wrote Still Alice with.
She was a guest on our show. One of my favorites.
She is fabulous. And she was a neuroscientist, and she was learning through her grandmother. And she said, don't correct somebody.
Right.
Join them. So if they're talking about the birds, join them talking about the birds. If there's something that they're fabricating in their mind, join them on their journey, because stop them and correct them. The frustration they're having already, not being able to know who you are or what day it is or what's going on in the world, let them be at ease and kind of add to that story as opposed to trying to change their course.
Yeah,
absolutely correct.
Really important. I just want to mention, we have a few minutes left. You're a mom, in addition to all the great work that you're doing. You're a mom. You have 3 children.
It's so funny when you say, I still don't feel like I've accomplished anything. And, we'll be together with the committee, but probably because it's not solved. So all of a sudden, I feel like I'm at the beginning of the road that you go, okay, where is this going? But you don't really feel like you've done enough until you can say, gosh, do we have that drug yet? We're not there yet.
But, we talk on this show. I shouldn't say you're not allowed to say that, but all these little milestones, there's been millions of them, right? And we need to learn to not take credit, but be proud of all of those little steps. There'll never be one miraculous cure overnight, right? I
think a woman's always thinking, gosh, you could do more. And you're just never being in the moment. That's why it's so great hearing like Serena Williams just say, hey, I am a competitor. I'm allowed to be aggressive. Those were things we were never allowed to say, but it's about time we step up and sort of say, let's get it done.
2 things I want to squeeze in. Okay, we're seeing all the time commercials for Prevagen, the jellyfish. What do you know about that in helping memory? Anything?
I have not heard anything about that.
Okay.
So, and again, you always are hearing, coconut oil or these. We really don't have the research yet. The one thing we do have is exercise. They've just finished a study over in Sweden where they put these seniors and they had them eat, the Mediterranean diet. And they found that it really was helpful. And it makes sense. When you exercise, you have blood flow. It goes to your brain. It helps you feel better, have more energy, and sleep. Good quality sleep. And all of these things are just good for the human beings. We just know what's good for the heart is good for the brain. So those are things that we know they're studied, but certain things to eat, these, we don't really have the science on it.
Yeah. But just yesterday, a study came out about the importance of walking to fight dementia. So I always say to my kids, move your body, move your brain.
Yeah. Throughout the day, not
the day.
First thing in the morning and then sitting at the computer all day. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Very helpful. Yes.
Yeah. Well, listen, I'm your biggest cheerleader and I'm so appreciative of your coming on the show and sharing your life story.
I love watching your segments. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm quite honored. I'm humbled, and I really appreciate the chance to be able to talk about something that is so passionate to me. So thank you.
We'll be staying in touch for sure, because I have to figure out how I'm going to help. Next up, you'll hear from Sherry Morrison, our Lifestyle Watch expert, and she'll be joined by author and photojournalist Ellen Warner. Stay tuned.
Action News, celebrating 50 years with AccuWeather.
The heat is on. In 2010, Philadelphia had a record of 55 days at or over 90 degrees. And those scorchers, they're on the rise. In fact, 10 of the 15 hottest summers occurred in the last 2 decades. Thank you for always trusting us to keep you informed.
You're streaming and we're streaming. Get the AccuWeather forecast and severe storm alerts 24/7 on our 6ABC streaming app.
Whether you're just getting started, already well on your way, planning for your future, drafting your vision, growing toward greatness, or finding that dreams really can come true. Whatever your next steps are, we'll be right here with you, just like we have been for 150 years. Start here, grow here, stay here. Penn Community Bank. Here we grow.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the memories. Go for the view that goes on forever. Go for the bubbles in your bathtub and in your drink. Go to bed whenever you want. Or don't. Go for him. Go for her. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
The following is a real testimonial from the father of a young injured victim.
I didn't think she was going to make it.
Major Perry's daughter was the victim of a horrific accident caused by someone else's negligence.
If you don't find the right counselor, law firm that you're looking for, you will get lost in the wilderness.
Badly injured? Call the Fritz and Bianculli Law Firm at 215-458-2222 and find out why they say, "We got this."
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Android TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News
The
live,
big story on Action News tonight.
plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on, always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Welcome to the lifestyle segment of Women to Watch. I'm Sherry Morrison. Today's worldly guest is an author and photojournalist, Ellen Warner. Welcome to the show, Ellen.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me, Sherry.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to this for some time now. In the beginning of the summer, I read about Ellen and this past March publishing of the second half, 40 Women Reveal Life After 50. I hadn't read the book. Yet I was intrigued as much about the book as I was about Ellen and how it all came about. Ellen, could you tell us a little bit about where you're from and your education?
Well, I grew up in New York City, and I was the fourth of 5 children. I went to school in New York. I went to boarding school in Connecticut, and then I went to Wheaton College, where I majored in art history. And that was the beginning.
Well, it sounds like when we spoke earlier this week that you did just after college or at the end of college quite a bit of traveling. And over the years, you've done a lot of traveling. Is this how you developed an interest in photography?
Yes, the year that I graduated from college, I took sort of a Thelma and Louise kind of road trip down to Mexico City, up the west coast of the country and across the country, and with various people, camping out, staying in a pension for university students down in Mexico City, and traveled 15,000 miles and took a lot of pictures. And then the next year I got back to New York and I worked at the Ford Foundation editing grants and took a night course in photography. And then the next year I said, could I possibly just work here in the morning and take a career course in the afternoon? And so that's how it started.
Well, that's interesting. And it's so nice that you had the flexibility with the people with the Ford company that they would allow you to do things like that and continue your education.
Yeah.
The photographs in your book are fabulous. You can see a lot about each of the women just from your photos. The beauty is comprised of so many qualities: the experience, character, heart. I read a lot of reviews about your book, and so many people were talking about how beautiful the women were in the pictures. It wasn't all about makeup and making themselves up. It was about their surroundings and what they had done in their lives. You started compiling information and interviewing, taking photos in 2006. So this has been 15 years in the works. What sparked the concept, and how did you come up with the religious, socioeconomic, and cultural diversity with this group of women? And how did you figure out what you wanted to ask them?
Well, it started on a little Greek island called Patmos, as you say, 15 years ago. And I was photographing a beautiful French woman. And I photograph a lot of people, I do a lot of portraits. And I always try and talk to them to make them feel comfortable, and usually talk about pretty much of nothing. But she had just turned 70. And I found myself really interested. And I said, well, what does it feel like to be 70? How have you changed? What did you learn in the first half that's helped you in the second? And what advice would you give to somebody my age? I was in my 50s at that point. And so that was the beginning. And then it just grew from there. A couple of days later, again, on this little island in Greece, I was sitting at a cafe and I noticed a beautiful woman over in the corner. And I said to the woman who owned the cafe, who is that? She's lovely looking. And she said, she's my mother. And I said, well, I've just started this project, and could I possibly interview and photograph her? And she said, well, you could photograph her, but she doesn't speak English. But her granddaughter could interview, could translate for you. And I asked very personal questions. What was the happiest time in your life? What was the saddest time in your life? And afterwards, I realized that granddaughter probably had a conversation with her grandmother that she never would have had otherwise. And then just time went on. And whenever I was on a trip somewhere, whether it was for business or, pleasure in Bali or Saudi Arabia or Oman, wherever it was, there were always women, and so I was always on the lookout for a woman to photograph and interview. And and friends recommended people, and sometimes they didn't work out, but they recommended other people. And so one thing led to another. And it was a wonderful journey, really, because it was something I was terribly curious about. And what I've discovered after it's been published is that there are a lot of other people that are curious about it. I mean, people in their 30s and 40s are fascinated. What do these women say? How can I prepare for older age? And then women my age in their 70s or older, see things that they resonate with. And yes, I feel that way. Or, I've never thought of that. That's an interesting way of approaching it. So it's really been amazing. It's sort of taken off, which has been a surprise to me and to the publisher, to the extent that it's been, it has taken off.
Well, I'm reading the book. I haven't finished the whole thing. And what I love about it is with all of the different women, I can just pick it up. I pick it up and I just open to a page. And if it's something that I haven't read, that's what I read. So it's kind of nice because you don't have to follow any special order. But the one thing I enjoyed was your foreword was written by Erica Jong, also an author and prominent in the development of second wave feminism. Huge right now. What a timely selection with the May vote overturning Roe versus Wade, and somewhat of a reemergence of the equality in the workplace during COVID. Was there a special way you came up with Erica, or did you just?
Well, she lives in New York, and she's really an icon in the women's movement, as you say. And she seemed a natural. And I had a friend who knew her daughter, and so she passed it along to her and said, would she be interested? And she was. So it was just, very nice that she did it.
Yeah, great timing.
Yeah.
I won't ask you who your favorites are in the book, because I'm sure asking someone, does this make me look fat? There's no safe answer because when you have somebody that. So do you have a few women you would like to tell us about?
Yes, well, you're right. I have no favorites because all these women, I sort of, I fell in love with them, really, which is why they're in the book. Well, a few that I could tell you about is, first of all, a woman in Saudi Arabia who was one of the first women doctors in Saudi Arabia. And when she was 15, she and a group of her friends decided that they didn't want to study geography as women were supposed to study. They wanted to study science like their brothers. And so they went to the headmistress of the school and asked her if they could do that. And she said, I don't think so, but you can go and talk to the person who's sort of the superintendent of education. And they went to talk to him. And he said, no, you can read, you can write, time for you to get married. And then without asking their parents, on Friday, which is their holy day, their day off, they dressed up in their school uniforms and they went to see the king. And the king at the time, King Faisal, said on Fridays, anybody who has any complaint or something that they're interested in can come and see me. So these little girls, they were I guess they were about 15, and there were how many girls? I don't know, 8 or something. Waited in line and waited in line and waited in line. And the king's assistant came to him and said, "It's time to go for your prayers." And he said, "I'm going to wait because I want to see what these girls have to say." And King Faisal was 6'6", and he leant down and said, "What can I help you with?" And they knew that they would be really nervous, so they'd written out what they were interested in. And so they gave him this piece of paper, and as he read it, she said she'll never forget that moment as long as she lives. His face lit up, and he said, "This is what I want for our country. I want women to be educated. And starting next week, you can study science." And he followed their progression all the way through and said, anybody who gets marks above 90 can go to medical school. And they all did. And then the question was, where were they going to study, in the United States or in England or what? And he said, no, you have to study in a Muslim country. You go to Pakistan. So she went to Pakistan, and she came back the first woman urologist in Saudi Arabia. So that's one person, and another another in Oman is this woman called Lali al-Balushi, who is illiterate, and she had a friend translate for her. And her mother died when she was very young, and her stepmother said, "You don't need to go to school. You can make yourself useful and clean the house." And so that's what she did, and she was married off very young. She had 3 children. Her husband left her and took all the children and went to Pakistan, where he married his second wife. And the youngest child was 2 months old. And then she got married again. She was married off several years later and had a couple more children. And then that husband left her. He was nicer, but he left her. And she couldn't read, so she couldn't drive, which women were allowed to do in Oman at that time, unlike Saudi Arabia. But she worked in a factory, and so she took a taxi every day. And she fell in love with a taxi driver, and they got married, and now all her children are back. And so that's a happy story. And I really want to get her a book, because I want her to see herself in this book next to people like Olivia de Havilland and all the other women, and know that people halfway around the world are reading her story.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. A very happy ending, and I'll help you find her. I'll go on a search as well. The first woman in the book, Odette, are these in order of the interviews as you did? Was she your first interview?
No, she was. Well, actually, she was. She was the first time I interviewed somebody that I didn't know. And I was in New York, and we were about to go to Paris because we had a friend who'd just been made the ambassador there, and we were going for some party. And so I was talking to my neighbor across the garden wall, and I said, how am I going to find women in Paris? And she said, well, you have to photograph my husband's aunt, Odette, and she's amazing. So I showed up at her door, and she was dressed beautifully, and she was very elegant. And I sat down with her. But the first words she said were, I'm not going to be photographed. I'm not going to be photographed. But I sat down and I took notes, and I asked her about her life. And she'd been in the resistance and captured, tortured, sent to Ravensbrück during the war. And after about an hour, she said that she usually spent most of her days in bed. And I noticed that she was dressed, looking very elegant, as I said. And I thought, Ellen, this is just one of those moments where you have to be brave. So I stood up, and I got my tripod out, and I got my Hasselblad, and I started to take pictures. And then she said, would you like me to sit here? Would you like me to sit there? So she became part of the process.
Wow.
And so there's a story with everybody that you photograph. And it was such a pleasure. And I just feel like an agent for these women, because it's not so much my story or my book. It's really their book.
Sure. So I think it's really interesting. And I also think it's exciting that the second half is being used in classrooms for gender and women's studies. It's an awesome source of the culture and diversity of women. And like you said, you've learned so much. I'm learning so much just by reading about all of these different people and where they're from. So what's next? Any new and interesting projects on the horizon?
men. I've my publisher wanted me to do another book about men over 50. And, I was wondering if they would open up and the way women do. And I said to a friend of mine, do you think they'll open up? And she said, oh, give them an hour and a half to talk about themselves. Of course they will. And the first person I did. So it's promising.
I think she's right. Well, Ellen, thank you so much for sharing the story behind the second half and your time. For more information about Ellen, her work, the second half, speaking engagements, go to www.ellenwarner, that's WARNER.com. Thank you again, Ellen. It's been a real pleasure. I can't wait to finish the book, and hopefully maybe I'll find some good men for you to interview.
Thank you so much, Sherry.
Sure. Sue, we'll be right back to close out the show. Keep living your dreams, ladies.
Action News, celebrating 50 years with AccuWeather.
The heat is on. In 2010, Philadelphia had a record of 55 days at or over 90 degrees. And those scorchers, they're on the rise. In fact, 10 of the 15 hottest summers occurred in the last 2 decades. Thank you for always trusting us to keep you informed.
You're streaming and we're streaming. Get the AccuWeather forecast and severe storm alerts 24/7 on our 6ABC streaming app.
Whether you're just getting started, already well on your way, planning for your future, drafting your vision, growing toward greatness, or finding that dreams really can come true. Whatever your next steps are, we'll be right here with you, just like we have been for 150 years. Start here, grow here, stay here. Penn Community Bank. Here we grow.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the memories. Go for the view that goes on forever. Go for the bubbles in your bathtub and in your drink. Go to bed whenever you want. Or don't. Go for him. Go for her. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
The following is a real testimonial from the father of a young injured victim.
I didn't think she was going to make it.
Major Perry's daughter was the victim of a horrific accident caused by someone else's negligence.
If you don't find the right counselor, law firm that you're looking for, you will get lost in the wilderness.
Badly injured? Call the Fritz and Bianculli Law Firm at 215-458-2222 and find out why they say, "We got this."
Do you stream on a Roku, a Fire Stick, Android TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app. Watch Action News live.
The big story on Action News tonight.
Plus special programming, breaking news, and severe weather updates.
Tremendous amounts of rain.
Always on. Always the news team you trust. Watch 6ABC 24/7 on your streaming device. Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. What a great show today. We're really profiling a lot of women and the stories that Ellen Warner shared. The author of Second Half was so inspiring. At the end of the show today, afterwards, you're going to hear a Women to Watch extra. Dr. Shalja Dixit, our Wellness Watch expert, is going to be joined by Marie Carl. Marie Carl is the president and CEO of Partnership for Maternal and Child Health. And they're going to be talking about the difference between baby blues and postpartum. So it's going to be a wonderful brief segment with Dr. Shalja Dixit and her guest. That's it for another week of Women to Watch. Next week, I'll be joined by Stacey Hauser, the founder of The Narrative, a brand and PR company. Have a great week, everyone.
We could do a summer party. It's the weather.
Can't we do this show outside or on the roof?
Weekdays at 9 on 6ABC.